Welcome to The Explainer. So today we're looking at something absolutely massive, a completely disruptive launch that is actively shifting the entire landscape of AI image generation. San Francisco-based startup Krea has just released the Krea 2 model family, and they are promising this wild, unprecedented mix of lightning-fast speed, architectural flexibility, and, well, a highly debated open-weight release strategy. If you're someone who relies on AI for any kind of creative workflow, you definitely need to understand this leap forward. All right, let's just jump right into this jaw-dropping stat right out of the gate. 2 seconds. That is literally all it takes for Krea 2 Turbo to generate a native 2K resolution image on standard consumer-grade hardware. It's just a stunning benchmark, really. It totally changes the way we think about the creative iteration process. It turns image generation from this slow, kind of tedious batch rendering chore into a real-time, interactive scratchpad. But, before we talk about exactly how they pulled off that speed, we kind of need to look at the core problem Krea set out to solve in the first place. We've all seen it, right? AI slop. It's that monotonous, super unoriginal, cliched imagery that just instantly screams, an AI made me. When models are over-aligned or trained on a really limited set of aesthetics, it poses a genuine risk to a brand's unique identity. The industry just desperately needed aesthetic diversity, which is exactly what Krea promises to deliver here. Section 1, the 2-second AI revolution. So looking at the numbers here, the real takeaway is how Krea hits this perfect middle ground. At 2 seconds, it's notably faster than Midjourney V8.1's 3 to 6 second window. And it just vastly outperforms OpenAI's GPT Image 2, which, let's be honest, suffers from some severe multi-step latency, clocking in at over 3 minutes. Now, sure, Flux 1 Schnell is technically faster at half a second, but the source material notes that Flux doesn't quite match Krea 2 when it comes to visual quality and overall aesthetic diversity. Krea really has engineered a true sweet spot.
Section 2, inside the single-stream engine.
Let's peel back the hood for a second and look at the 12 billion parameter diffusion transformer making all this speed possible. Just as a quick technical refresher, most older models use what's called a multi-stream architecture that processes your text prompts and the actual image pixels in separate networks before mashing them together later. Naturally, that creates latency. Krea decided to build a single-stream architecture completely from scratch. This means the attention and the multi-layer perceptron, or MLP layers, are natively shared between text and image tokens right from the jump. Unifying text and images instantly like that drastically cuts down on computational complexity. And the raw technical innovation here is just brilliant. Krea replaced traditional MLP modules with a lightweight bias term, which actually freed up a bunch of parameter budgets. Then, they took those freed up parameters and pushed them straight into the core layers and spatial encoding, specifically an axial rope 3D positional encoding system. That's a mouthful, but basically it maps out height, width, and frames, which is going to be absolutely vital for their future video and multi-frame generation features. Section 3, raw canvas to turbo speed. Now, just as a quick reminder on open weights, unlike those locked-down, closed APIs from giants like DALL-E 3 or Midjourney, where you just ping their server and get an image back, Krea's open weights mean the actual physical trained model files are yours. You can download them, run them locally, and deeply retrain them. You are truly empowered to build upon the technology yourself on your own hardware. But here is where they did something really clever. They completely separated the workflow. Krea 2 Raw is your unrestricted blank canvas. Now, it takes 52 inference steps and needs some pretty hefty hardware, like 24 gigs of VRAM, but its completely neutral latent space makes it perfect for deep fine-tuning. Krea 2 Turbo, on the other hand, is your high-speed printing press for the factory floor. It is distilled all the way down to just 8 inference steps and runs comfortably on standard 16GB GPUs to churn out images in 2 seconds. To put this into perspective with a real-world application, let's look at the creative services platform Superside. They manage very distinct styles for dozens of global brands. So what do? Their engineers train custom LoRa's, which are basically style adapters, using that highly accurate Krea 2 Raw model. Once the brand-specific unique style is locked in, they just port that LoRa straight over into Krea 2 Turbo. By using this exact workflow, Superside literally cut their asset production time by 65% and dropped their monthly API costs by half. Section 4, no fake data allowed. So Krea enforces this incredibly strict zero synthetic data policy. See, when models train on images generated by other AI models, you get what researchers call model collapse. Suddenly, everything starts looking like the exact same cliched plastic render.
To prevent this, Krea utilized advanced Dino v3 and Siglip2 classifiers to just aggressively purge any AI-generated data from their training sets. As the team themselves put it, they don't want to dictate what is beautiful. They simply want to provide the model with the full, rich spectrum of actual human visual styles.
And to help us actually navigate all those visual styles, Krea built in an LLM prompt expander. You really don't need a PhD in prompt engineering anymore, or an hour of trial and error for that matter. A basic, simple prompt like a futuristic city at sunset gets internally expanded into this rich professional-grade request. We're talking terminology like physically based rendering and volumetric atmospheric haze. So everyday creators can achieve these highly technical, stunningly detailed results without all the headache.
Section 5. The open source catch. All right, so here is the controversial twist. While the weights are open, they come with some very mandatory behavioral guardrails. The Krea legal team has been clear. They want to open the tech, absolutely, but they refuse to make it unaccountable. Safety responsibility has to be distributed across the entire value chain. So this is definitely not a do whatever you want Wild West release. It is conditional.
Let's actually break down this conditional license. It is entirely free for individuals, independent creators, and businesses with under 50 seats to monetize and build upon. That's great. However, larger enterprises have to negotiate custom licensing. But more importantly, anyone hosting these models must implement active classifiers to block illegal and harmful content. If you don't build in those safety layers, Krea can legally just revoke your access. As you might guess, this hybrid approach has sparked intense debate. Open source purists are arguing it violates software freedom, while pragmatists say, hey, it's necessary to avoid massive regulatory crackdowns.
Section 6. The future of creative AI. Krea actually has this truly fascinating underdog story. Founded by a couple of engineering dropouts in 2022, it started out as just a sleek user interface wrapper that orchestrated other companies' models. But they were smart. They leveraged $83 million in venture funding to evolve. They shifted completely away from platform dependency, releasing custom checkpoints, an autoregressive video model in 2025, and now their very own foundational Krea 2 models. They're even partnering up with highly regulated architectural firms like Henning Larsen to make sure they're compliant with the strict EU AI Act. But since this model is still fresh out in the wild, independent researchers are busy stress testing a few massive open questions, like, does the model exhibit any long-term biases? Can the raw model actually handle highly diverse fine-tuning at scale without running into catastrophic forgetting? Will these massive enterprises actually agree to adopt this custom license? And ultimately, will the community generate enough high-quality LoRa's to sustain the whole ecosystem? Which brings us to one final big picture question. Does Krea 2 represent the new middle ground for the AI industry? By prioritizing artistic control and that raw 2-second speed over centralized corporate alignment, Krea is really challenging the dominant lockdown giants of the space. Will conditional open weights be enough to dethrone those proprietary platforms and become the foundational infrastructure of our creative future? That is exactly what the entire industry is watching right now, and it is going to be absolutely fascinating to see how the open source community shapes it. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning what's possible.